Welcome to A Matter of Perspective with Judge Derwin Webb. I'm Judge Derwin Webb, coming to you from the Fraser History Museum. I have an opportunity to interview one of Louisville's legends, Louisville great, Mr. Eric Wood. Mr. Wood, welcome to the program.
Well, I appreciate that introduction as a legend. That you're using it a little loosely there, but I appreciate that.
No, not at all, because I would tell you this. I have known of Eric Wood, known of you, since you were in high school, because I used to listen to all the sports shows, sports talk shows, and they were talking about the incoming class, and they talked about you a little bit. But the one thing that I noticed, and one thing that we talked about prior to going on the air, you were a two-star. So how do you go from being a two-star into the NFL great that you were?
You know, a lot of great opportunities, and I didn't even start my junior year of high school. I played tight end, and I was kind of a basketball player as well. And man, by the grace of God, Jeff Braun walks onto a football field and said, "Hey, as wide as you are, you should put on some weight, maybe become an offensive lineman." So I decided I'm going to quit basketball for my school my junior year, put on 50 pounds, go back out as an offensive lineman my senior year, and have a great year. I get offered no scholarships all year. And we win the state championship in Ohio, which is a pretty big football state.
Right.
And we played a bunch of guys that played in the Rivals All-American game, and I'm playing well against them, still no scholarships. And U of L's football coaches come up to Northern Kentucky, watch me play a basketball game, and actually offer me a football scholarship after the basketball game. And I get to U of L, I redshirt my freshman year, but I was able to watch a lot of the veterans. I had guys like Jason Spitz who go on to have long NFL careers. I got to watch them prepare every single day. He was an offensive lineman as well. So I got to learn from a lot of people. I had phenomenal coaches, phenomenal resources here at the University of Louisville, and I made the most of those opportunities. I worked hard as well, but there was a number of just phenomenal opportunities given to me along the way that I'll forever be grateful for.
Well, tell me about some of those teams, because you had some very successful teams while you were at the university.
We did. So my freshman year when I was redshirting, that 2004 team was excellent. So many future pros on that team, and I got to learn from all those guys, and I got to take it in for a year. Well, then my next year when I go and start as a freshman at center, I had learned so much. I had traveled, and so I was prepped to have a good year that year. I go and make first team freshman All-American, and I get this letter in the mail, and it said, it gave a percentage of guys that make the first team freshman All-American team and then go on to play in the NFL. Prior to that, me and my high school buddies used to joke, if you could be on the practice squad for the Bengals, because I'm from Cincinnati, I could go get a job in the offseason and then make $90,000 on the practice squad for the Bengals. How awesome would that be? You know, that'd be incredible. Well, my goal shifted when I got that letter. When it became less of something unattainable and something I thought I could truly attain, well, then my focus primarily became, I want to be a first-round draft pick in the NFL. I got to see Nick Mangold become a first-round draft pick as a center, because prior to that I thought, man, center's probably your mid-rounders. I see Nick Mangold was drafted in the first round, and then I just set my sights on that.
Well, things got real for you real quick, especially after our freshman season. Talk about prepping to get into the NFL. So you go through college, you graduate. Let's talk about that for a second. Not too many football players or basketball players, in a lot of people's eyes, really take school seriously. But you were a student athlete. Talk about the reasons why you wanted to be seen as a student more than anything.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the public perception, but it's amazing how many of our best football players were great students. And I always say, guys that handle their business in the classroom generally handle their business on the football field, and it correlates. You rarely see guys that are really, really good football players that aren't committed in the classroom too. And I'm not blowing smoke there. There's a lot of guys that don't graduate because they leave early or they didn't have the time to get their degree, and a lot of those guys come back. But it's amazing. We used to have a top 10 board of the top 10 GPA guys, and it was amazing how many of those guys play on Sundays. When you look up at that board and you see Harry Douglas and you see Lamar Miles, who played on Sundays, it's amazing how many of those guys were on that top GPA board that were the guys that would end up getting drafted because they're handling their business. But for me, I was a political science major. My grandpa was a judge and a county commissioner in Ohio.
Political science major here also.
Yep. I assumed so. And so to honor my grandpa, he did so much for me growing up that I wanted to potentially go into law one day. Now, when I took my last political science class at U of L, I thought, man, I don't know that I want to do this anymore, and that might be part of the reason I'm in broadcasting now. But taking care, I think taking care of business in the classroom is just like anything in life. When you're willing to do the little things in the classroom, you're probably willing to do the little things on the football field. You're probably willing to do the little things for your family. You're probably willing to do the little things for your faith. And those types of people, in my eyes, are successful.
So take me through the draft selection. You finish your senior season. Tell me what happens after your season.
The season ends.
And the reason why I want to ask you this question is because a lot of people have never been in this position, don't know what it takes to go into the draft, and what it's like to be a professional player. So just kind of take us through some things.
Right. So our season ends. We don't make a bowl game. We played on Thursday night football against Rutgers. That Sunday morning, I took off for Orange County, California, and that Monday morning I started 2-day workouts training for what would ultimately be the Senior Bowl and then the Combine. And those were long days, and it was a lot of hard work. It's always a lot easier when you're surrounded by 15 other guys that are all in the same boat, and we were all grinding to try and make our dreams come true. And going into the entire process, I knew I could potentially be a first rounder, but when I first sat down with my agent, he said, probably second to fourth round. Mm-hmm. I go and have a good Senior Bowl, had a good Combine, and the Buffalo Bills made my dreams come true. The 28th pick of the draft. That was back when not all first rounders got invited to the draft, so I was just sitting in my mom's apartment up in Cincinnati with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, mm-hmm. And just really family, because back then it was the first and second round the first day. Second day was third to fifth maybe, and then the rest was the third day. And I was thinking, back then it was first and second, then the rest. And I surely couldn't have a draft party and fall to the third and, be sitting there with a bunch of people. So I made the conservative choice, but we still got to celebrate ultimately. Okay,
so you finally make it to the NFL, your dream. So what was it like what's a typical day for an NFL player?
Yeah, it varies depending on who the coach is, but generally for me, it was get up to the facility around 6 a.m. Meetings will start at 8. So you can basically do whatever you want prior to that, but generally you have some type of rehab treatment on your body. I like to get my workout in the morning, get my blood flow going. I still like that to this day. It just helps me get my day going, eat breakfast, and then get to meetings at 8. So I generally get up there between 6 and 6:30. And then your final meeting will end maybe at 5 p.m. So that, throughout the day, you got a bunch of meetings, long meetings. You learn to drink coffee in the NFL because you got a bunch of grown men sitting through these meetings, and man, you talk about sitting in a 2.5-hour meeting after a practice when you showered and you're in the AC. Your eyes can get a little droopy. And then, at the end of the day, it ends about 5. If you knocked your workout in the morning, then you're either free to go. I would generally have some other type of treatment or whatever, maybe some extra film to watch, and then head home for the day. But it's a lot of hours during the season, but I always tell the college guys, I say, wait till you get that first off season. You don't have to go to class. You got a little money in your pocket to travel. Now you still need to handle your business, but I'm telling you, it's worth it.
So tell me about your most successful team when you were with the Bills.
Yeah, it was ultimately my final team. So mm-hmm. when I got to the Bills, they were on year 8 of a playoff drought, and I rode that to my final year in the NFL, my year 9. So year 17 of a playoff drought, we finally break the drought. We finally get to the playoffs. And I played on more talented teams. I mean, our 2 teams that Rex Ryan coached were really talented. We just didn't play together as a team as much. We didn't have, and people get hung up on all the culture talk, and they think it's phony. It's not. Mm-hmm. When you got a team that plays hard for each other, think about the Indianapolis Colts when their head coach gets cancer.
Yeah.
And the team bonds together. You got Andrew Luck in his rookie year, a team that was 2-14 the year before, but Chuck Pagano gets cancer, and now they bond together, and this group of grown men goes out and plays like grown men and plays through the whistle, and all of a sudden they make the playoffs. In 2017, we truly cared about each other. We had traded away 3 of our best players in the preseason, thinking we all thought they were trying to tank. But we still had some good pieces on that team, and we banded together, and we went out and broke the playoff drought.
So you go through that. So you're thinking about the next season that's going to be, but you didn't realize that was actually going to be your final season. So I do have a question for you. A lot of people talk about retirement. How did it feel for you to almost be retired without having to really make the decision for yourself?
Yeah, so many NFL players, it's a rare case that you walk away on your own terms. And I knew that reality. I signed a contract extension before my 9th season that would have put me through year 11. I was the only player on the team that played 100% of the snaps that season. I'm an alternate for the Pro Bowl. Think I'm getting ready to go to the Pro Bowl in 2 weeks. I have a son that's getting ready to be born. I mean, life is good. And I had been injured a bunch throughout my career, so I'm thinking I'm fine. I got some stingers during the year, a neck deal that will send some burning sensation and numbness through your arms, but. A lot that happened to my high school teammates. We're all good, and through some MRIs and an exit physical, they found out my career was essentially over. At C2, C3, I had a disc sitting in my spinal cord, and they weren't sure how it wasn't damaged. But any damage to your spinal cord there is paraplegia, loss of respiratory function.
Right.
Pretty serious stuff. I had a brother who had severe cerebral palsy that never walked or talked or breathed on his own his whole life. I saw what that looked like. And then for them to be giving me this diagnosis, and there was really no possibility of a return to play, even surgery at that point, as high up as it was, you're still deemed unstable to play football again. So my career was swiped from me.
Right.
I was not prepared for it. And thank God I was surrounded by an amazing wife, amazing family, amazing Christian brothers, amazing friends that just poured into me to where that didn't truly become just a distraught period of life. Yes, was there with any loss, whether it's a career, a loved one, whatever it may be, there's a time of hurting, but just super, super fortunate. The foundation I had outside of football. People always say you need to have something outside of sports to fall back on. And I agree to that an extent, but you got to be really careful if you pour into a career outside of professional sport too much, because I always say you're going to get to that career a lot sooner than you think. You're gonna waste time in the NFL, and in one season, let's say you make $5 million, and you're pouring into this job that can make a couple $100,000. I'm using round numbers. These, for the sake of it, that's 20 years. It would take you to make that salary, that one-time salary. So be careful what you pour into. But now you need a foundation outside of sports. You need to have, for me, my personal belief, strong faith, family, whatever that looks like, Christian brothers that truly know you, and then obviously having a great spouse always helps as well.
Well, I've known you for a little while. I've known of you for a long time, though. In the conversations that we've had, you constantly talk about your faith and your family. Football is what you did, but it's not who you are. Talk about your faith. Talk about your family, because it seems to be more of who you are. So talk about that a little bit, please.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're playing, like when football was taken from me, I always would say, football does not define me. And then when it's taken away from you, you find out how much it truly did. And I was guilty of that. And I did pour into a men's group in my church here in Louisville, Southeast, poured into people, but it was still a big part of me. So I don't want to pretend like it wasn't.
Believe me, I get it. I get
it. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But my faith is my foundation, and we're both on the U of L FCA board. I got introduced to a relationship with Christ in college by Chris Morgan, who runs U of L FCA. I grew up Catholic. My parents took me to church as a kid, but I didn't truly have a relation. I never understood the relationship aspect of it. I knew the rules aspect of it.
Right.
And you get to a point in life where if it's only rules and no relationship, it's like parenting. You break away if there's no relationship, and there was no relationship there. And then when I started digging into the Word, when I started feeling the peace that came from having a relationship with Jesus Christ, that changed my life. I remember giving a testimony in Buffalo at a couples Bible study, and I was prepping for it, and I was telling my wife, I said, I wish I had this big aha moment. Like this one day, God spoke to me, and I went and got baptized, and it was
your Damascus experience.
Yes, exactly. I'd never had Paul on the road to Damascus experience. just over time, I developed a relationship and I saw the fruit of it in my life. And my wife was like, that's powerful. It is what a lot of people can relate to that. Not as many people can relate to the big moment per se.
Right.
And I had big injuries. I broke my leg in half in Jacksonville. I wish at that moment I said, God, I give it all to you. And maybe if I hadn't already, my career ending would have been that humbling moment where I would have had to. But I had already done it, thank God, and I had a lot of peace that came with it. But, I start my day in the Word every single day. And I wish I could say I give them 10% of my day to start the day, but I at least give 10 minutes to start the day. And I know that's going to set me up for success throughout the day. At least I heard a talk by a Navy SEAL one time that said if he makes his bed in the morning, at least he knows accomplished something.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like me if I knock out a little bit of the Word, knock out my morning devotional.
Let me ask you this. You're a former professional athlete, played football for the University of Louisville. You've had some great experiences. Have all these experiences taught you how to be the dad that you're becoming now?
Wow, that's phenomenal. Well, fortunately for me, I grew up with two extremely loving and supporting parents. So very fortunate to be able to learn from them. I have learned from one of my favorite couples in the world. Me and my wife have been in a couples Bible study with Dave and Beth Stone. I actually had them as a couple on my podcast because I said, man, people have to hear some of these lessons that you've given. And it's amazing some of the stuff that I do with our kids or with my wife that just are Dave Stone or Beth Stone copies. But I've dealt with loss in my life. My parents were divorced. My little brother passed when he was 11 years old. I was 14. I dealt with big injuries that I had to come back through. I think all that stuff, pushing through those things, learning from other Christian men. I'm in a Bible study that we range from about age 25 to 65. I get to learn from these men. And all those things combined contribute to what I hope will just be a very healthy, fun, energetic relationship with my wife. I know there'll be bumps in the roads because there always is in a marriage. And then with my kids, I want to.
How many do you have now?
2. We have a little girl who's 5, Grace, and I'm coaching her soccer now. And a little
soccer
boy,
dad.
Yep, a little boy who's 2.5, Garrett, and blessed to have one of each. And I just try and pour into them. And look, I lose my patience with them. I'm so far from perfect, but I love to learn, and learning about parenting and all of that and being able to pour into other men and teach them as well is something I'm passionate about.
Let's talk about your current career. You're the analyst for the ACC network. What is that like now for you?
Yeah, so leaving football, I didn't know exactly what was next for me. So I started a podcast. It's called What's Next with Eric Wood. I got into a little bit of broadcasting, so I did some college football work for Fox my first year out, called one game, did a couple pregame shows. The following year, I signed on with ACC Network and ESPN and also the Buffalo Bills radio network. I tend to not do things halfway, so when I went into broadcasting, I got 2 gigs. So I go from college football, I get to a college football site generally on a Thursday night, get out of there at some point Saturday, go to wherever the Bills are at, and then get home at some point Monday. And it creates a pretty crazy fall. But I need that. It's a competitive thing for me. I like that competition. Me and my wife are also very comfortable with me working really hard in the fall and then having a lot more downtime in the off season. That's kind of what our sweet spot was for so many years. So it's not that tough for her. She also gets to travel to a few cool games with me now, which is a lot different than when I was playing. But so I'm doing that now.
So let me ask you this. People have come on in the past on this show, have talked about what work conditions are like under a pandemic. How are things for you now, trying to cover these games or trying to figure out if you're going to have a full season? What's the atmosphere with football, for the fall?
Yeah, it's caused me a lot of anxiety because up until a week or so ago, there was so much uncertainty around what I was going to be doing with the Bills, and I'm not going to be able to travel to New York because of 14-day quarantine rules, and what this college football season is even going to look like. And for a while, it was, are any school is going to play? And then it's just ACC, SEC. Okay, now we're going to do this big ACC schedule. So for me, we'll see what it looks like week to week. Hopefully, they're going to do enough. I know with the ACC doing 3 tests a week, you would assume that they would be able to pull the guys away that do test positive if there's going to be positive tests, where they wouldn't be playing on Saturdays, where it would just really cause a hardcore infection within a team. Worst case, both teams. But not that football is bigger than any life. This is a serious pandemic we're in. This coronavirus is serious. So many people have lost loved ones, lost jobs. But when you're looking at college kids, and I truly mean this, and I could be dead wrong. I understand that I'm not a medical expert, but by saying these kids are safer not being at school and playing football would be assuming that 18 to 22-year-olds are going to sit in their house and do nothing for the next 5 months. They're not. Mm-hmm. By going to the grocery, I'd argue you're at more risk than you are walking in a college football facility right now and being in a locker room, because these guys are getting tested 3 times a week. Mm-hmm. They're also doing as much as they can to keep these kids in a bubble outside of the building. And so I think it is extremely valuable for them to be there, getting the proper nutrition, getting poured into. I know when I left for college, me and my brother's room turned into one bed for him. I'd have been back sleeping on a couch probably. Mm-hmm. How many of these other kids are doing the same thing instead of sleeping in these gorgeous dorms we have on campus now? And so I truly believe, not just because it's my profession now, that it's good for these kids to be back playing college football.
Let me tell you, what's next for you? You've had a professional career. Now you're in broadcasting. Do you see yourself continuing to do this for a while, or what are some of the goals that you have for yourself?
Yeah, I'm truly all in on broadcasting right now. I think I would be an injustice for me not to give it a full shot. I don't know how long that is, but I want to see where I can take this. I really enjoy my job with ACC Network. I love my role with the Bills, being back up there. I have my foundation in Buffalo still. Getting to be around the coaches, the players still is a really fun deal for me. And then I call the games on the radio. I truly enjoy it, but I don't know what God's going to put in front of me in the broadcast field. We'll see. I'm excited about it, though. I also have my podcast. I mentioned it before. And similar to what you do, I like to do interviews that impact people, inspire people, and inform them. Like, whatever the topics would be. I had a former coach of mine, Leslie Frazier, come on and talk about social injustice, because I said I want to inform people. I can't do it personally. You do it, Leslie. I brought on some of the best leaders, the best Christians, businessmen I know, because I figure if I'm learning something, others are as well. I just want to continue to learn. Ultimately, I love pouring in to men, helping them develop in their faith, which ultimately sharpens me. Anytime you're pouring into others, you're probably getting more fulfilled along the way. But kind of just seeing where this all takes me. I'm really enjoying coaching 5-year-old soccer right now, so who knows one day where I'll be at. But I think my competitiveness wants me to – I know personally I want to go after the broadcast thing and see where it goes.
What's the best advice anyone has ever given you?
There's that's a great question, and I wish I could give it off the top of my head. I will say this though, our family mission statement is based off Proverbs 11:25. A generous person will prosper, and he who refreshes others will be refreshed. I asked a buddy of mine who leads men's ministry at Southeast, Ronnie Cordray. I asked him one time. I said, "How do you have more joy than anyone I've ever been around?" And he said, "Honestly, I try and pour into people, and Proverbs 11:25 says this, and I feel like I'm more refreshed just because I'm constantly trying to pour into people." But he said, "Look, you don't see behind the covers all the time. You get to see me at Man Challenge." But after he told me that, we decided as a family we wanted to be more generous. We wanted to pour into people. When I sent my daughter off to school in the morning, today was her first day of kindergarten. "Hey, Grace, what are you going to make today? The best day ever. What do you do? Spread joy." And so it's like, how do we do that as a family? So I know that's not necessarily one piece of advice, but that was something someone gave me that was phenomenal.
If someone did not know that you were a football player, a former football player, how would you want to be described? How would you want to have them look at you or see who you are? How would you want that to be?
I wish I could say like a scratch golfer or something, but that's not going to happen at this point.
Okay, three words to describe you.
Yeah. Christian, loyal, optimistic.
Tell me why.
Well, my faith is super important to me. I feel like if I was known by Christian values, then that would cover a lot of the other things I would say as far as integrity, whatever it may be. I feel like I truly appreciate people who are loyal, so I would want someone to say I was loyal. And then I try and live with a sense of gratitude about me, a sense of optimism. I feel like it's amazing the people I'm surrounded by now, and I think a lot of that's from positive energy, portraying that in different situations. So a sense of optimism, I feel like goes a long way.
Last question. You've lived a very fulfilling life, even as young as you are. Question is, do you have any regrets of anything you've done? And if you do, what would you do differently?
Man, I have plenty of regrets, but I'm extremely grateful for where I'm at. So it's almost like you go back. Kyle Idemann's sermon from last weekend was talking about if you could go back and take away hurt from your kids, how quickly you would do that, but then maybe they wouldn't end up where they're at right now. So I would hate to do that. I mean, I could think of plenty of over the weekend I lost my patience with the kids. I wish I could go back and not yell at them. And man, I have regrets on a day-to-day basis, but I'm far from a perfect person. I'll have regrets the rest of my life, but man, extremely grateful to be sitting here with you.
Man, I appreciate that. Let me just say this, and I'm not just saying this. You know, I've been around the program for several years, and I talked to a lot of people about former players, and I will say this. Out of all the athletes that have come through the university, your name is probably at the top of a lot of people's lists.
Wow, I appreciate that.
Football player, basketball player, baseball, soccer, whatever have you, they always talk about Eric Wood, talk about his professionalism. I've heard people talk about your faith. I've heard people talk about your work ethic, your ability to stay focused, and your integrity. So, man, I want to not only thank you for being on the show, but I want to thank you for coming to the University of Louisville and coming back and making a difference here, because I see the person that you are, and I see what you're trying to do here, and this community is going to be a better place because of your presence. And so I just want to thank you for doing all the things you've done for the University of Louisville, for the city of Louisville, and for being a part of this show.
Wow. I'm extremely appreciative of those words. You got me sweating. I'm uncomfortable hearing stuff like that, but that blows me away. I truly appreciate that.
Well, thank you again. Thank you again for coming on. And once again, thank you for being a part of A Matter of Perspective with Judge Derwin Webb. We'll see you next time for another show.